Well, good Wednesday morning, everyone. This is sort of the first normal day back. I was on the road yesterday in many parking lots from my trip to Denver. I'm so far so good. No worse for the wear, as my mother used to say. But anyway, I'm still bathing in the bliss afterglow of a marvelous Noticon 14. It's the 14th Noticon. And I'm just sort of getting my head back together and redoubling our efforts to try to get back to Costa Mesa, California, hopefully before the winters the winter hits up here. So if you're down in the Costa Mesa area, please find us find us a place and tell me about it. Okay. Um, anyway, this book came out while I was gone, and I talked briefly about it yesterday from the car. The Lion of Light, Robert Anton Wilson on Aleister Crowley. It's really good. Okay. Anything by Bob Wilson is good, but Bob Wilson wrote a lot of stuff and a very, very big piece on Aleister Crowley that had never been published before. Okay. And it's just marvelous. And Richard Kaczynski wrote a beautiful foreword to it. I wrote the introduction to it. As a matter of fact, now that the book is out, and I want you to buy it, okay, just not for me, for the good folks that edited this and got it out. So I'm going to share with you my introduction. It's not long, but and I hope it makes you want to buy the book. Okay. So and there's pictures. I supplied some pictures. Robert Anton Wilson, Vis-a-Vis Aleister Crowley. A few words of introduction. By Lon Milo DuQuette, otherwise known as Stonehenge Equinox. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. It was 1975. 1975 was a very magical year for me. I turned 27 in July, and on November 15th, I became a new initiate member of Aleister Crowley's magical order, Ordo Templi Orientis, O.T.O. I say, quote, new initiate because even though the order had existed since the turn of the century, it had lain dormant as a functioning magical society since Crowley's death in 1947. Upon Crowley's death, leadership of the order passed to the organization's Grand Treasurer General, Karl Germer, who made the unpopular decision to discontinue initiations and group events and focus instead on the order's attention and resources exclusively toward publishing Crowley's writings. That was probably a wise thing because I'm digressing here. Because with the situation at the time was that if the writings didn't continue to be published, even the trickling of the material that was published in those days, if that had not occurred, the Crowley and Thelema could have easily, completely disappeared from the historical record. So, unpopular as his decision was, it was probably wise to focus the full attention on keeping a few things published. But I digress. As years Years passed. The remaining members, approximately 24, died off one by one until 1961, when Germer himself passed to that undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns. News of Germer's death was not immediately revealed to the remaining members. Indeed, it was nearly 6 years before it was made known, and it was 1969 before the aging surviving members took steps to resume initiations and return the O.T.O to a functioning initiatory order. A series of unlikely accidents would conspire to allow me to be among the first of these new initiates. My initiator was the new head of the organization himself, Major Grady L. McMurtry, known by his O.T.O magical name, Hymenaeus Alpha 777. And then in my footnote, assisting him in my initiation was his then wife, Phyllis Seckler, who was also an Agape Lodge O.T.O alumnus, 9th degree O.T.O initiate. McMurtry was an alumnus of Agape Lodge, or Agape Lodge, however you want to correctly say it, in Los Angeles in the late 1930s and early 40s, and a personal student of Aleister Crowley. As a young U.S. Army lieutenant, he had been the only order member able to visit Crowley in England during World War II. McMurtry was a colorful character whose illustrious pre-war colleagues in Hollywood science fiction subculture included his O.T.O Lodge brother, John Whiteside Jack Strange Angel, I threw that in, Parsons. Also Ray Harryhausen, Forrest Ackerman, and Ray Bradbury. Quite a team hanging out together. Bradbury tells the story where he and Ray Harryhausen and Grady McMurtry all went to see the premiere of on Halloween night, 1930 something, of Bob Hope's The Cat and the Canary. And Ray Harryhausen, this is from a letter that Ray Bradbury wrote. Ray Harryhausen had made up a horrible, like, monster mask. Okay. And during, and they would sit behind an old couple, I guess, at the theater. And at the really scary part of the movie, Harryhausen would pull out this mask and then shove his face over and freak out the old couple sitting next to them or in front of them. So I'll find that letter and read it someday. Anyway, but I digress. At the ceremonial dinner that followed my O.T.O initiation, McMurtry regaled me with tales of Crowley and magic. It was obvious to me that this man was a wealth of magical and Kabbalistic wisdom, but he was also one of the coolest and hippest individuals I'd ever met. After allowing me to divine my magical future using Crowley's own handmade I Ching sticks, he announced, "I've got something I think you'll enjoy." He then disappeared into the living room library and returned with a small paperback book with a colorful but rather corny-looking cover. He pushed it across the dining room table and said, "These guys are brilliant. They have fun with Crowley. If you don't have fun with Crowley, you'll go mad. Sex, drugs, magic, aliens, conspiracies. You'll love it. Bob Wilson was an editor at Playboy. Unquote. The book was, of course, Illuminatus, The Eye in the Pyramid by Robert Shea and Robert Anton Wilson, and I did enjoy it immensely. That November evening became for me the alchemical marriage of two of the aeon's outrageous and brilliant minds engaged in the very act of mutating the consciousness of the planet. Worldwide interest in and respect for the work of Aleister Crowley has exploded since that night in 1975. Ordo Templi Orientis is now arguably the largest and most influential magical order in the world. In the first 15 years, our local lodge in Newport Beach officiated scores of degree initiations. Of the new initiates I interviewed in those years, at least 75% told me they had been initially drawn to magic and Aleister Crowley because they had read the Illuminatus trilogy and the works of Robert Anton Wilson. In 1981, Grady McMurtry and I would again find ourselves sitting at a dining room table. This time at the home in Sacramento, California. Joining us that afternoon was filmmaker Kenneth Anger and Robert Anton Wilson. The four of us were guests at one of the organizers of the weekend, were guests of one of the organizers of the weekend event held that weekend at California State College in Sacramento. It was billed as the Neuroromantic Infrasion. And Leroy Lauer and the late David Wilson were also there with me. As you might imagine, the table talk was delicious. When Bob learned I was in the O.T.O. and was lodge master of the Newport Beach Lodge, he laughed and asked if I was the one who presented Dr. Timothy Leary with some kind of Adam Weishaupt Illuminati Award the previous year. I proudly told him I was. Then, without thinking, I added, and we'll be giving you the next one. I'm sure he thought I was joking, and he seemed more anxious to speak to Grady about knowing Crowley personally. Grady was only too happy to oblige. Later that evening, both of them would lecture at the college. Bob opened his talk with the words, Aleister Crowley is an I. Whose I? No one knows. After that night, Bob and I stayed in touch and would eventually share a publisher. For several years running, we were both booked as presenters at PantheaCon. Okay, now PantheaCon, if you don't know, from 1994 to 2020, PantheaCon was a conference for pagans, heathens, indigenous, non-European, and many other diverse beliefs that occurred annually over President's Day weekend. Well over 2,000 people attended, more than 200 presentations that ranged from rituals to workshops, from classes to concerts. Okay, so. For several years running, we were both booked as presenters at PantheaCon. The organizers, knowing that neither Bob nor myself would be spending much time in our comped rooms, booked us together as roommates on the presenters floor of the hotel. Each year, we'd hang out a little in our room to dress and freshen up and chat about our work. Bob was in a wheelchair at the final PantheaCon we both attended, and it was my distinct privilege to chauffeur him to the stage, the man and the mind of what I considered to be an honest-to-God, this Illuminati. I'm particularly honored to introduce this particular collection of Bob's thoughts about another honest to God, this is Illuminati, Aleister Crowley. I can think of no better way to conclude than with the words engraved upon the plaque our O.T.O Lodge presented to him in 1989 as he took to the stage to speak at a Masonic lodge in Santa Monica. Now, first of all, I'm going to share. This is that table in Sacramento. Now, me and Kenneth Anger are both on the other side of that table, but that's Grady McMurtry and Robert Anton Wilson. And here is sort of a formatted version of the plaque. Our lodge presented Bob the Adam Weishaupt Illuminati Award. Okay, and there's the ever handsome, still handsome Victor Coleman of our lodge presenting him the plaque. It's got that in his hand. And look at the t-shirt Bob's wearing. Anyway, here's what it said. Adam Weishaupt Illuminati Award. The Guild of Advanced Thought, GOAT, of Haru Raha Lodge, Ordo Templi Orientis. O.T.O, peace, tolerance, truth, salutation on all points of the triangle. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. The Guild of Advanced Thought, GOAT, of Haru Raha Lodge O.T.O is honored to present to Robert Anton Wilson the third annual Adam Weishaupt Illuminati Award. The first one was Dr. Timothy Leary. The second was Francis Israel Regardi. But I digress. Honored to present to Robert Anton Wilson the third annual Adam Weishaupt Illuminati Award in recognition of incalculable service to humanity and others. Because of his inspiring novels and astonishing research, Mr. Wilson is directly responsible for raising the consciousness of our planet and other worlds beyond our realm. Then we leave it with a quote from Hankoff Worke the Sixth, was die Schwerheit. There's my German. No man can aspire than this, that he be remembered as one who selflessly obeyed the harsh dictates of logic and reason, and that he was truly disinterested and objective. Love is the law, love under will, given this 21st day of January, 1989. And that's my introduction to this beautiful new book, The Lion of Light, Robert Anton Wilson and Aleister Crowley. If you're a fan of either of these guys, you will want to at least read this and hopefully buy a six-pack of them. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.